Hey everyone, this is Mike from the Comic Book Trove here today with another Omnibus review. And today I'm going to be taking a look at another recent reprint from Marvel, collecting some classic Silver Age material, this time looking at the Incredible Hulk Omnibus Volume 1. Now, just as was the case with the recent reprints of Thor and the X-Men omnibuses, this was another Silver Age book that had originally come out a long time ago, I think 2008 or 9 in this case, the first printing came out. And only ever had that one printing, so it's been a long time to finally get a chance to get it now with a reprint, so I'm certainly very happy to have it as a Hulk fan. It's cool to have this early material, this history collected here. And yeah, hopefully we might end up seeing a volume 2 of this at some point now. But let's take a look at the book. I'll give an overview, flick through the book, share some of my thoughts on the material as always, and hopefully give you that insight as to whether or not this is something you yourself might want to pick up and add to your collection. So if we look at the dust jacket then, first of all, this is the DM direct market variant. This is the Jack Kirby cover to Incredible Hulk issue number 1, Hulk's first appearance, in which he was originally grey. And taking a look around the rest of the dust jacket, on the spine, you know, got the small font there. At the bottom, your creator names, got Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko and Marie Severin. And a cool little image there, I do quite like that, fighting the Abomination. And then we've got the cover gallery on the back. So exactly the same content as the original printing of the omnibus. We've got Incredible Hulk issues 1 to 6, that original short-lived series. The full Tales to Astonish run, issues 59 to 101. And then the first issue of the retitled Incredible Hulk series, when he went back to having his own series with 102. Underneath the dust jacket, we've got, you know, pretty plain design here. It's just the Incredible Hulk, written in nice green though, quite like that. Same spine design, but there is a little change in the image under here. I assume that's the image you'd get on the standard variant, the dust jacket, the Alex Ross cover. And on the back, I do like this, pretty awesome Jack Kirby Hulk head. So, right then, let's take a look inside and have a look at the Hulk's beginnings. So we've got a few different creators in here, quite a few different artists, all worked on the Hulk in these early years. Main writer is Stan Lee. He wrote pretty much all of this, in fact everything, with the exception of that Incredible Hulk issue 102, that first issue of that series, which was by Gary Friedrich. But then pencilers, so we've got Jack Kirby, obviously co-creator of the character, Steve Ditko, does quite a few issues in here, Marie Severin, and then quite a lot of fill-in artists who do the odd 1 or 2 issues as well, people like Dick Ayers, Mike Esposito, Gil Kane, John Romita, Bill Everett. You know, you can see them all down here. Obviously a lot of inkers as well. So yeah, so it's got quite a good chunk of history in here. The Hulk was quite a strange character. Didn't really get off to the smoothest of starts, I would say. So started off initially in his own series, which ran for 6 issues, was published bi-monthly at the time, before being cancelled. And then the Hulk was absent from comics of his own for about a year and a half, before they started regularly having him feature in the Tales to Astonish series, which he shared, I think, originally with Ant-Man / Giant Man, and then with Submariner. But in here we get that full Tales to Astonish era. So it is, you know, 59 to 101. Those are short stories because it was split between 2 characters, just as was the case with things like Tales of Suspense, Journey into Mystery, Strange Tales. Those kind of shared anthology books. So those are only about 10 pages each, those stories. And yeah, we jump right into it here then. So there are a couple of introductions throughout. Just kind of skimmed over that actually before we jump in. But there's just a little essay introduction here by Stan Lee from the original Marvel Masterworks collection of this material. So that's from 1989. Talking about the origin of the character, these very early stories, these first 6 issues of his own series. So, right, so the Hulk, okay, so I've spoken before about how Silver Age characters in particular, when you're looking at characters who've been around for a long time, tend to be quite different in most cases when you go back and see how they started out. You know, they weren't fully formed, they weren't quite the, you know, version of the character that's become most well known, I suppose you can say. And I think that's really the case with the Hulk more so than anyone else. The basic origin here has pretty much remained unchanged to this day. So Bruce Banner, noted scientist and weapons expert, has designed the gamma bomb. As it's about to be tested, this young teenage boy, Rick Jones, is seen out there in the testing fields, Bruce races out to save him, and in so doing gets caught in the blast and, absorbs all the radiation. And rather than just die, he starts to become the Hulk. But in this first issue, I think it's a pretty well-known bit of trivia by now that the Hulk started out as grey. And initially, in this issue as well, his transformations occur by day and night. So he's Bruce Banner by day, Hulk by night. And that concept would later be revived and used brilliantly, in my opinion, by Peter David, many, many years after this, during his run. But the changes, the specifics of how the Hulk and Banner change and transform between each other, they keep changing that so many times during these early years. So initially it's a day and night cycle. By the second issue, second and third issue, I think it becomes a case of he becomes permanently stuck as the Hulk, but he's kind of hypnotically linked to Rick Jones, so he has to obey every mental and verbal command given by Rick Jones. It's like really strange. Honestly, they clearly couldn't figure out what to do with this character. And all the while, you've got some crazy classic Silver Age wacky stories going on. So in issue 2, we see here the Hulk is green now, and you get the invasion of these alien Toadmen coming to Earth, threatening to destroy the Earth with magnetic power. Totally crazy. So we've also had the introductions of other classic characters. Rick Jones I mentioned already. He was hanging around a whole lot, especially during the 60s. First he was hanging with Hulk and Banner. Then he was hanging around with Captain America, then Captain Marvel. He was frequently showing up with the Avengers. He was all over the place. But then we've also got Betty Ross, regular love interest for Bruce Banner, and her father, General Ross, pretty much the key antagonist of the Hulk for a long time. A few other key villains. The Leader first appears later on in the Tales to Astonish issues, and the Abomination as well. Really strange, this bit though. So this is where he's got to obey Rick Jones. There is almost no explanation given to how that becomes the case, by the way. I think Rick Jones himself just kind of says, I have no way of explaining this, but it's incredible. He has to obey my every command. It's that kind of thing. The Ringmaster and the Circus of Crime, they first appear in here. Pretty weird characters, but quite fun, I've got to say. I actually kind of like that crew. So Hulk is kind of this brainwashed permanent Hulk at this point, but then in the next issue, somehow Rick Jones, despite being a 16-year-old kid with no scientific knowledge, is operating this incredibly high-tech looking radioactive machinery that he uses to turn him back into Banner. And then at this point, this is like the next stage of the Hulk, and we're only in the 4th issue here. And this is already the 3rd phase of the Hulk and how his transformations work. So at this point, Banner can now use this big machine at will to transform himself into the Hulk and retain some intelligence. But whilst he's the Hulk, he's got a darker personality, just a bit more of a kind of arrogant, slightly mean personality. So that's what's going on at this point. So, all during this time, we haven't got to a stage yet where Bruce Banner transforms into the Hulk when he's angry or emotional. That's got to be the most iconic version of the character. That being the transformation trigger. And that does start to happen, but only kind of later on during the Tales to Astonish issues. During these early issues, it's really all over the place. So it's kind of... it's an interesting read, I'll say that much. If you're interested in the Hulk and you want to see how it all started, obviously this is perfect for that. But the actual stories themselves, I've got to say, these early ones, I can totally see why this Hulk series was cancelled in the first place. Because there's just no consistency. Issue to issue, it's changing. There are, there's some minor continuity problems as well where, little throwaway things like General Ross will say, if Bruce Banner was under his command, he'd straighten him out in a heartbeat, stuff like that. And then in the next issue, he'll be talking about, because Bruce Banner is under my command, I demand that we find him immediately. Weird stuff like that, just weird little inconsistencies. It just seems like they couldn't figure out what to do with this character, really. This is the 6th issue, though, the 6th and final issue, just ending there of the series before Hulk kind of disappeared from his own series for a bit. So then we've got another introduction here by Stan Lee. This was the next Masterworks. We jump into the Tales to Astonish stuff now. So this, keep in mind, this Tales to Astonish 59, this is when they'd started having Hulk appear again. But this was about a year and a half, so that issue 6 of the Hulk had been cancelled. And yeah, prior to this then launching, Hulk had appeared in, you know, a couple of issues of Fantastic Four. He'd been in the Avengers briefly, very briefly, when that started up. Appeared in, I don't know, I'm sure something else as well. But then finally got to start regularly appearing again here after those sporadic appearances. So now he's sharing the magazine, basically. These are the shared stories, and I think these are the stronger stories. So when you get to this Tales to Astonish stuff, I think it's a lot better than those first 6 issues. I just think that was a really rough start for the character. It's so bizarre to read it. And just how, you know, even by Silver Age standards, how little sense some of the stories make for those ones. It's just really weird. But as I say, it's pretty fascinating to read it anyway. Steve Ditko artwork here, pretty cool to see, for about 8 issues. Ditko's Hulk is certainly pretty unique looking. But then again, Ditko's artwork is, you know, always has been pretty unique, so that pretty much goes without saying. But it's around about here that we start to see Banner realizing that his transformations to the Hulk seem to be triggered by emotion. So that's, you know, pretty key development. But at the same time, he notes, and we see, that the transformations back from the Hulk to Banner are also linked to his emotional state. So it's like he gets angry or stressed and he turns into Hulk. But then if, as Hulk, he gets angry or stressed, he turns back to Banner. So yeah, we're not quite at that bit yet where anger fuels his strength. You know, that classic angrier the Hulk gets, the stronger he is thing. Yeah, that's not the case here. Again, that comes in later on. Just so many changes, so many little tweaks that they did to the specifics of how and when this transformation occurs. It's just crazy. But it's got the leader here, big green-headed dude. Samuel Stearns, I think his real name, and he is kind of classic evil scientist. He's gamma radiated, but the gamma changed to him has heightened his intelligence rather than his strength, which is why he's got that huge head, presumably housing a huge brain. It's all fun. You know what, I've said before, I'm kind of an unapologetic Silver Age Marvel fan, so even when you're looking at what is probably objectively some of the weaker material from that era, which I'd say this probably qualifies as overall. You know, certainly it's not on that same kind of top tier level that I always put Spider-Man and Fantastic Four on. But it's really cool to see because you're kind of watching so much character development and character experimentation in this case, really. Because this is, you're almost just seeing them brainstorming. You can almost envision it in your mind, or I can anyway. As I read these issues, you can almost envision those behind the scenes conversations of them trying to figure out how best to make this character work. With all the different ideas that you're seeing on display in a short period of time, really, when you've got it collected all together like this. But as we move on, you know, we start to see moving more towards the familiar, I would say, you know. By the end, you know, of the stuff in here, I think you get to about issue 80 something of Tales to Astonish, and that's where it does become pretty firmly established that Banner changes into Hulk when he's angry and back when he calms down. Honestly, what I would love to see is a volume 2 of this, because this takes us just, well, close to the 70s. Takes us to about 1968, the material in here. And I think that, you know, by the 70s, Hulk was kind of a pretty fun series to read by that point, but getting there through a lot of this, it was certainly a bit of a challenge, it seems like, for the creators to just figure out, as I say, what the status quo was really going to be for this character. So you're getting plenty of weird and wacky encounters with strange characters, as is standard for the Silver Age overall. A lot of forgettable throwaway villains. Stuff like here, you got the man called Boomerang. All these weird masked figures, characters who mean pretty much nothing now, but make for generally pretty fun reads. Binding, by the way, you know, on this, I don't often mention binding on the channel actually, because if there's no issue with it, I don't tend to bring it up, but just to reassure anyone, because occasionally I do get asked. Binding's totally fine on here, sewn binding. Not having any issues with it. Stretched it a couple of times, but with most Marvel books, that doesn't tend to be too necessary, really. And page quality as well. I guess just mention this, because this is something that seems to be starting to bother people. The pages are kind of thin, not to a point where it bothers me at all, but you can sometimes just see a little bit through a bit of the reverse side of the page, kind of bleeding through a little bit. As I say, it's never prominent enough that it actually bothers me, and I've got to kind of stare to see it. But you know, I know it bothers some people, so I'm gonna mention it. A couple of issues here by Gil Kane as well. Pretty cool to see. I don't think these are pretty weird. Like I don't know, is it just me? The issues here look kind of strange by Gil Kane. Abomination though, showing up in his early form. That was the first appearance, issue 90. First appearance of the Abomination. Then he's carrying over into the next story as well with issue 91. But yeah, certainly a pretty weird looking Hulk in these issues. I don't remember him looking that strange. But Marie Severin, I think she did a great job with the Hulk. He really kind of developed a classic look for the character. You know, this is looking a lot more Hulkish straight away. You know, this is more what I think of when I think about the Hulk. Oh yeah, Silver Surfer turns up as well. They end up in a fight. Kind of classic misunderstanding. I think this is one of the first Hulk comics I ever read, and I mean many years ago when I was still a kid. I think I read it in one of those Essentials, those black and white collections. And I remember just having so much fun with it. You know, I think if I remember the story right, and I probably haven't read it in, well, almost as long as that. I think it's just the Silver Surfer trying to go about his business and the Hulk insisting on attacking him. And it was fun. I like it. Getting towards the end though of the Tales to Astonish era. And you know, these are pretty quick reads as well. As I mentioned, they're only about 10 pages each, these Tales issues. So I think they're a lot more digestible. You know, the quality might not be right up there, but because they're pretty short, you get through them quickly anyway. For me, really, it's just those first 6 issues. That Incredible Hulk 1 to 6, they are a bit of a slog to get through, I'm not going to lie. But when you get through those, I was having more fun with this stuff when I read through all this last time. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying every issue is fantastic and memorable. I'm not going to pretend I remember all of this perfectly. It's been a while since I read it, but I can just tell you overall, you know, I enjoyed it enough to keep reading it, and that really is what you want, I think. You just want something to entertain you, and when it comes to comics, I mean, that's the main thing as far as I'm concerned. And I'm just really happy to have this. You know, it's another great bit of Marvel history. I'm glad that they're reprinting these long out of print Silver Age era omnibus collections. I know a lot of people would like to see the Avengers ones reprinted. I've covered Avengers Volume 1 on the channel, and yeah, I think they're long overdue for a reprint, as are the Invincible Iron Man. Those couple of omnibuses as well. I don't have those myself, but yeah, I mean, for that reason, I'd love those to come out again as well. But I'd love to see, as I say, a Volume 2 of this. There's never been a Volume 2. You know, the first printing of this book came out, what, 13 or 14 years ago? And there was never a Volume 2 in all that time. To be fair, I don't think this sold well originally. I think it kind of hung around in clearance sales for a lot of places for a long time. I guess a lot of people weren't into it then, but the omnibus collecting hobby, the whole thing, I think a lot more people are into collecting these now. A lot more people are aware of omnibuses than were certainly about 10 years ago, whenever that would have been, when this finally went out of print. But yeah, for that reason, I just think there's a much bigger audience for it. And if they would, well, hopefully this sells well enough now that we can get a volume 2. Because, you know, I just hate to see those volume 1s orphaned and stranded on the shelf without any subsequent volumes to pair them with. Here's a Not Brand Deck issue. I'm not even going to talk about it. I've talked before about how I don't enjoy them. They are these satirical parody things, you know, whatever. Supposed to just be parodying their own material in this weird cartoony way. Don't like it. Not going to say anything else really. Well, this is cool. Peter David writing something. Haven't read this yet, but Peter David's run, not only my very favourite Hulk run, but one of my absolute favourite runs on anything ever. So I will need to read that, see what he has to say. And we've got the extras in the back. So house ad for issue 1, pretty cool. T-shirt art by Kirby. Those original pencils, love to see these kinds of original rough pencils as well. Some Steve Ditko ones here. I like how in here it doesn't even know, they don't seem to even know exactly what it was. It's just like possibly intended for issue 60. Pretty cool. Original artwork's always good to see. And then you get some of these, you always get these in Silver Age era books, these reprint covers that reprinted the material over the years. Trade paperback covers, modernized colours. That's pretty weird. Bruce Timm Hulk. Bruce Timm being the classic kind of animated Batman style artist. And here's the Alex Ross cover, the variant, which is available again for this book as a standard variant cover. It's a recreation of that. I should say. Easier just to show it. But yeah, I generally prefer the original artwork with these things, especially when it's like a first appearance cover. I always like to go with the original if I can in those instances. But yeah, as I look through the book, and hopefully something that was interesting to see. It was, as I say, an interesting time for the Hulk overall. It was very kind of strange and experimental time in a way as they got towards trying to figure out what this character was all about. And for that reason, it's not the smoothest read. You know, it's quite strange, quite jarring to read it in quick succession, as opposed to, I suppose, 2 months apart, which is what readers were originally doing with those first 6 issues. But it's definitely, as I say, it's interesting. You know, I'm a Hulk fan. I like to see this early stuff. Even if it's not the very best stuff, I can still appreciate it and have some fun with it. But I know it's not going to be for everybody. So let me know if this is something you feel like picking up yourself, if it's just not for you. But either way, you know, happy to hear thoughts and differing opinions. But as always, thanks a lot for sticking with me if you've watched all the way through this, and I'll be back again soon to discuss something else.